Now our thing is to tell whether the expressions in each pair are equivalent. And again, all we're doing is telling if they're equivalent or not. It doesn't say to explain. It doesn't say to justify. It doesn't say any of that. It just says, tell me if they're equivalent or not. I would like for you to explain. However, the directions do not say that. So it just says to tell if they are equivalent. Well, what's 7 times 1? Or 7x times 1? 7x. So is 7x the same thing as saying 7x? Yes. So these guys are equivalent. These expressions are equivalent. I will give you extra credit on your homework if you can tell me why they're equivalent. So if you can tell me, hey, look, 7x times 1 is the identity property of multiplication, then, and you write that out, you can say 7 times x times 1 is the identity property of multiplication, and that's why these guys are equivalent, then I will give you extra credit. Okay, that includes that one. Let's look at these guys. Are these the same? Well, what's 12 minus 5? Or 12 minus 7. 12 minus 7 is 5. Is 5 plus x the same thing as saying 5x? Is it the exact same thing as saying 5x? No, it's not. So these guys are not equivalent. These expressions are not equivalent because addition and multiplication are not the same thing. And again, if you write that out, if you tell me that addition and multiplication are not the same thing, I'll give you extra credit because technically the directions do not say to explain. They just say to tell me if they're equivalent or not, and they're not. But if you guys give me the why, I'll give you extra credit. I'll give you extra credit. Okay? So if you can tell me that, hey, addition and multiplication are not the same thing, I'll give you the extra credit. What about this? This looks a little bit scary, kinda. Can I simplify in here? And remember, I can divide and multiply when they're not like terms. I cannot add or subtract. So I can divide in here. What's 24 divided by 2? Good. It's 12. What happens with my x's? Well, what's x divided by x? Good, it cancels out. So I'm just left with a y. So are these guys the same thing? Yes. These expressions are equivalent. Expressions are equivalent. And again, if you tell me, the reason behind it, that you simply divided and you came up with 12y and 12y, then I will give you extra credit. So again, if you tell me that, hey, look, by simplifying 24xy and 2x, I come up with 12y by just dividing, then I will give you extra credit if you tell me why. Word problems. Don't let this scare you, because honestly, there is nothing to be scared about this. Let's see here. Yeah, we gotta do deductive reasoning. Okay, so looking at this, word problems, how many milliliters? Okay, so first of all, you have prepared 42 milliliters of distilled water, so that's a big part of this, right? Another big part of this is 18 milliliters of vinegar. Whoopsie, sorry guys. Another part of this is 47 milliliters of salt water for an experiment. So we're sitting either in Butler's class or Brooks' class or Schaefer's class, whatever the case may be. And we are going to be doing an experiment with distilled water, vinegar, and salt water. Okay, so it says how many milliliters of solution will you have if you first pour the distilled water, then the salt water, and the vinegar. So it's saying, hey, look, my distilled water is 42. So distilled water is 42. Then it says, then the salt water is 47. Then the vinegar, which is 18. Now, I can't really do that in my head right now. So we have 42 plus 47 plus 18. What do we come up with? 107. So our total experiment is going to be 107 if I pour the distilled water, the salt water, and the vinegar in at the same time into the beaker. Okay, so part B says, how many milliliters of solution will you have if you first pour the salt water, then the vinegar, and then distilled? Well, salt water is 47, vinegar is 18, and distilled is 42. How much am I going to come up with, guys? Good, 107 milliliters. I didn't even have to plug that into my calculator again. I didn't even have to add again. And this is why. On part C, it says to explain why the amounts described in A and B are equal. What property did you use? You could have said, hey, we did the associative property, or we did the grouping. We didn't really do the associative, did we? We didn't really do the associative property, so that's the grouping property. So we did not do the associative property, but we really did what property? We changed the order, so we changed how we communicate. Good. So it's the commutative. Of addition. Again, it's of addition, so I gotta put the word of addition in there. All right, so that takes care of, are these expressions equivalent?